This is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Pandemic Reveals that U.S. is Run as a Labor Camp with Political Leaders as Overseers. So this is kind of a stepping back episode. There are specific events that it refers to. Specific policy changes and political acts that are triggered me to think about this metaphor of the U.S. and it is a metaphor. U.S. as a labor camp. It is not technically a labor camp, but it is a lens to look at how political leaders, mainstream political leaders of both parties, treat the American worker, the American population overall, where a majority of people in some way either are being trained to work in some form or other, if they're in school and they're learning either a trade or they're getting a degree to eventually work in some capacity, and most people get their income from work, and so anyway, so it's not, or people are retired, but they once were workers. So in any case, work is a critical component of people's lives, and how you've worked in the past or will work in the future is important. So there's a workers is a very broad category. It's a 85% of the population, and even people who are small business owners, people who whose only employee is themselves, they are also in some way or another workers in this context, in the way I'm talking about it. And that may be controversial. It's not technically true in some way or another in terms of a strict, let's say, Marxist definition of class, or even other definitions of class where workers do not own the means of production. But anyway, this is something that the pandemic, in some sense, has revealed the degree to which political leaders do not care about people's humanity overall. They do not care. The political leadership of both political parties, and I think there are exceptions. There are politicians, there are elected officials who do care, and they are a minority. They tend to be on the left wing. They tend to be people who do not take donations from corporate PACs. They're the Squad, they're Bernie Sanders, and maybe a few other people who hold political office, and who are really concerned about the humanity of people, and in some sense, another sort of inspiration or another trigger in this thought process of mine is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has talked about dignity, and dignity has come up in other contexts by other people, not just from her, but that's one of her central focuses of her politics and of her, seems like her philosophy, her political philosophy, and her moral philosophy, her ethics, and human dignity. And so a focus on people as laboring individuals, and where labor is, their total value is the labor they produce, and that's all that matters, is an orientation that is likely to lead to looking at people instrumentally, and looking at them as a tool, or as an asset for capital, or for government, and if, in other words, an employer of some kind. And so an expanded definition or expanded view of people's humanity that includes, for instance, their health, that there's a right to health and health care, that doesn't currently exist in the United States. We don't guarantee health care, and we don't guarantee a job too, in the sense that we don't have a job guarantee, we don't have a housing guarantee. And now there are other societies where let's call them social democracies, where there are more or less, there are social contracts where people are at least guaranteed health care. Often, sometimes they're not, job guarantees are not so common, but there are also more social supports, more programs that help people with the labor market. In other words, help people either enter the labor market or be given a buffer time when the labor market doesn't support them, when the labor market doesn't offer them a job they can do. So in the United States, these are very, very thin. We have unemployment insurance, but it's a very limited and undignified program that isn't oriented toward people finding themselves in their next job, and it is more about going out and just throwing yourself at employers until one hires you. So anyway, the pandemic has shown, like, various moves by policymakers, by political leaders, have revealed, and especially with the Omicron wave that is still breaking over us and that is luckily subsiding, or in the process of peaking and then subsiding, that policymakers and leading bureaucrats and so forth and so on have essentially exposed the current administration, and also by extension even more so the previous administrations, and because one would expect the same or worse from a Republican administration, that the focus of either now the director of the CDC, for instance, in shortening the quarantine time to 5 days rather than 2 weeks from after being infected with COVID-19, so that basically the focus is on getting teachers back to work, getting airline employees back to work, and faster, and also without full regard for the potential for reinfection and for infecting other people, and or just exacerbation of symptoms, development of new symptoms. So the short, and also the lack of support for quarantining, the lack of, if you don't have sick time, you will not be paid, and you might be put in the position of having to maybe be fired if you quarantine, or you're at least having unpaid leave from your job if you don't have enough sick time for it, for your even the 5-day quarantine. So and so this and there was so that's one data point, and another data point is a teacher or a calling into the Sam Cedars Majority Report, was talking about how he's an intern and he is already burnt out because he felt that basically no one was caring about him, that he was just being thrown into schools and as a substitute, and he substitute teacher, and he I mean, it's just the absolute worst time to enter the teaching profession, and but it also is a revelatory time in the sense that the lack of caring for his welfare, but also the welfare of the students and even the welfare of the parents. So basically, it's a mess. It's a chaotic and haphazard and reckless reckless policy making, reckless for a number of different people, not just workers, also students, also consumers. There's a whole bunch of people who are involved. Humanity, more generally. So, this. Even though I call this episode, this is about a labor camp. In a way, it's also just a camp in the sense of it's a society that is run as a camp as by overseers who do not empathize with and understand the situation of ordinary people, and it doesn't take much to put yourself in the position of other people. And some of the quote unquote overseers, the Democratic Party overseers, the ones who claim they care and empathize with people, can simulate sometimes, but again, it's they can simulate a sympathy or even an empathy for ordinary people, or they talk as if they know it, or they refer back in time to when they were children, or when that their parents had such a hard time, and they had to hard scrabble childhoods and so forth and so on, but they are now so compromised, and this is they're so corrupt and they're so compromised by their relationship with donors. Again, the politicians who are not corporate funded, who are small dollar donor funded, are not so much in this position and are less likely to be compromised like this. Though there are some people who like Pramila Jayapal, who essentially, to me, was bought off by the Biden administration, at least through various, making nice with her, and she went along with the voting for the infrastructure bill separate from the Build Back Better bill, and then with consequences that were very, very clear to me and to others, including the 6 representatives who voted no on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, that this was basically saying jettisoning Build Back Better, and that it wouldn't really pass without the leverage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill attached to it. So, but anyways, and Jayapal made some, was bought off by a very, to my mind, very sleazy move by Biden, where he called up her mother in India and praised, so basically pouring on the honey to sugaring up the whatever it is, the bait, so to speak, or the appeal, but not really playing the hardball that she needed to play at that time to keep Build Back Better on track. And so but basically the idea that I'm putting forward here in this video is that politicians are, in serving the donors and serving essentially the employers, the big employers, and that they are really acting as overseers, and they are in the position to put all kinds of compulsions in, or threats or compulsions into our society, the way our society is built, or at least to allow the existing compulsions in the chaotic, rickety structure of our social safety net and our social system overall, not just the safety net, the way our society is organized fundamentally, allowing those to create enough chaos and worry and that people desperately throw themselves at jobs, or they're trying at least to do that. Now, with the pandemic, there are moments where people are taking a step back. So this particular video may be expressing in different terms what various workers have been expressing with their hesitancy, for instance, to get another job, or shifting and changing careers because of the deprivations involved in working in a particular job that was either paying too little, was hazardous, the benefits were bad, didn't help, they had to take care of children, and the job wasn't flexible enough for childcare, duties and so forth and so on. So anyway, this perspective, at least, of looking at politicians and political leaders as putting these compulsions into our society and standing behind them in a way, and not saying, look, let's create a floor for people to have a basic sort of subsistence floor, and then allow people to then grow from that floor, okay? And instead, they're saying, no, there's no floor. You can slide all the way to the bottom. You can become homeless. You can uninsured. You can go bankrupt from being sick, or from going to school and trying to educate yourself. And so that there's no floor, and that the Democratic Party talks as if we're about to install this floor, we're about to do this floor, but they're not. They don't follow through, and they don't feel entitled themselves to fight for that floor. They don't. They feel like the Republicans, this perspective of the employers, the perspective of the, let's call it sadistic. Okay, I mean that sounds, but it is in locos sadist. In other words, it's like a simulacrum of sadism, if it's not actual sadism in the sense of enjoying putting other people in pain, but it's certainly it is an endorsement of a cruel system, let's say, and a system of compulsions and deprivation that is visited on not everybody, but on people who are not owners of capital, who are not and who are not wealthy enough, okay, and who can't enjoy some of the socialism for the rich, quote unquote, that we have, or the crony capitalism that we have, where there's a club, so to speak, of people who are better off and who are able to get benefits even from government, while it's much sparser the poorer you are, and the less well situated in the labor market you are. And so anyway, so there's and we see in other societies that this floor basically exists. Not in all other societies. Some other societies, you can slide all the way to the bottom too. But those are not developed societies. So America is particularly among the societies with lots of that have been quite fortunate, and very, very fortunate, and also very powerful, and at the same time very cruel. Okay, and very cruel to people in other countries visiting war and on them, and being thinking of them as pawns on a geopolitical map, and not really caring about the welfare of people abroad, but also not caring about the welfare of people here, with some, or at least hoping, and this is where sort of the casino, or there's another, I'm mixing metaphors here, but there's a hope that, let's say, certainly the casino aspect has covered up the labor camp aspect. In other words, that we have, when things have been going good, when things are hot, when the in terms of the market is hot, or when the employment, there's a boom of some kind, this is covered over, this aspect of compulsion, and it's not, but fundamentally, it's the pandemic is revealing that we are not, the government is not on our side in general, and not at all on our side. And also the appeal, we see the appeal of neo-fascism, or Trumpian neo-fascism, in that he at least presents this vision of caring for the quote unquote forgotten man, or whatever is the white middle class, lower middle class, and working classes, and so forth and so on. And he puts out this vision, which he doesn't realize. He's not going to realize it. It's a sham. But that's the other alternative, is to go to, which is forbidden in U.S. political system, is go to a social democratic system, not a fascist system, not a neo-fascist system. And that's something that stupidly the media elites, and the political elites have said this is unacceptable. And and that would be a society where people have a slight, a measure of dignity, a measure of rights, guaranteed rights that are. We have some rights in the United States. They're under fire, and they're constantly being chipped away. But these are rights having to do with material well-being, and that we have supposed to in our ideal sense, we're supposed to be getting it from our private employment, and in the market, and our position in that market. So and there's also a big picture issue here. So it's like, and this is where I think I think the fundamental issue is, and maybe this is something to explore, I will maybe be devoting future episodes to this, is, can we have a society without compulsion with regard to work? And this is a big political philosophy debate, in the sense that, the left thinks that we can. The left thinks that, and meanwhile the right wing says, no, you need to basically put people in danger, and then they will thrive, or they will at least survive, okay? And then the left says, no, we can create a society which has this floor on it, where we're not, work is not a complete compulsion, and there's also, there are jobs that that people don't necessarily want to do. So it's like, well, how do you, and there's all kinds of philosophical issues you can talk about in terms of our relationship to work. But I think that I think we have a fundamental doubt in our society, and that's why the social democratic option is so weak here, is that we have a fundamental doubt that we can build this society where we're not desperate, okay? That people are attached to the desperation in their minds, that they think they take in the attitude. In other words, a political leader like Joe Biden, or like Donald Trump, or like has an enormous, or the media figures that constantly create the discourse that people imbibe, several hours a day, or depending on how much they absorb news and so forth and so on. But anyway, that puts them in the position of feeling like, of course, we need to be throwing ourselves at the market, so to speak, and be and not and throwing ourselves at private employers, or public employers, but not taking a look at what are our needs, where do we fit in, how does this help me? And again, some people are able to do this more than others, and they're able, but more and more people are falling through the cracks, especially now that this pandemic, and among other things, and also climate change is the big kahuna that's going to stress test the hell out of our society overall, and the tenuousness of our society and the casino-like nature of our society overall. But anyway, I think that there's that doubt for people to fight for their rights, the rights to a job, the rights to health care. They need to put aside those doubts and say, we can do this, and this is something that is we can create this, and we are right to do this, and we are correct, and not and we won't be cowed by the political leaders and the media and the interpolation. This is a fancy word, but anyway, or projective identification, another fancy word. How when someone talks to you in a certain way, you feel a certain way about yourself, and that's when their powerful message is being sent that way. You tend to, imbibe them and live them out, and feel like that's the limit. That's who you are, and that's something that people are trying to break out of in different ways. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, and also please share your thoughts about either the pandemic in work or this particular line of discussion in terms of are we a labor camp? Do politicians act like overseers in the labor camp? Are they on our side as people who have families and who work and so forth and so on, or are they on the side of some other people who are not so favorably inclined to us? So anyway, and also if you're enjoying Politics 2100, please subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.